Our guest today is a hospice chaplain, along with being the creator and director of Life Review, the Hospice Musical. He's sharing his story and how music has been part of his hospice journey. You're connected with the Heart of Hospice. I'm Jerry Finter, here with Helen Bauer.
Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, we're here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is brought to you by Hospice of Southern Maine. As the leading nonprofit hospice provider in Maine, Hospice of Southern Maine is committed to high-quality patient care and providing professional and community education as well as grief support to the counties they serve. Hospice of Southern Maine provides compassionate care through end of life for patients with life-limiting illness and support for their families in the comfort of wherever they call home. Connect with Hospice of Southern Maine on Facebook, Instagram, or hospiceofsouthernmaine.org.
Benjamin Kintisch is our guest today, and you and I sat there and just laughed through most of this interview.
Oh, he's hilarious. I have to tell you that when you were starting the headline, to introduce the episode, I was thinking about it and almost started laughing just because he's so funny and he's warm and he's got a weird project. Can we just say that from the beginning? And I think Benjamin would say that too.
Well, and I think that's why it was so interesting to us.
Right. It just doesn't seem to fit. So he is the creator of a musical called Life Review, the Hospice Musical. And it is about hospice.
Yeah.
The main character is a hospice chaplain.
It's a really kind of, quirky and funny, but also a very moving musical. He's actually performed this in several different venues, and he talks about how people just seem to relate to what is being sung.
Right.
And related through the music of this musical.
Yeah. So we're going to tell you a little bit about Benjamin himself, but we're going to let him tell you the story of the musical because nobody could tell it the way he does. He's just amazing. So Benjamin Kintisch is a cantor, a hospice chaplain, and a music teacher. He holds a master's degree in sacred music along with a cantorial degree. He completed 4 years of chaplaincy training, which he talks about, and he has served in both hospice and elder care facilities. He is now a superhero as a middle school chorus teacher.
Yeah, imagine that.
He's amazing. So here's our conversation with the funny and warm and wonderful Benjamin Kintisch.
Benjamin, we are very happy and excited to have you on the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Jerry and Helen. For the last 15 minutes, listeners, we have been reviewing our first names.
Yes, I'm Jerry. This is Hilda.
Right.
Really, there's
that
no
would be
glamour.
Hilarious if you guys were here during sound check, but sorry.
It's still pretty funny. At least Jerry thinks it's funny.
I thought it was.
You remember your alternate name I came up with, though? When you said you wanted something more girly?
Oh,
It starts with an N and it rhymes with Shmavea.
Nevea?
Correct.
Nevea.
Yeah, which is heaven backwards.
Spelled
Heaven
backwards.
Right.
I like it.
There you go.
I think it's a good one for you.
So
I'm going to stick with Benjamin Kintisch.
That'll be easier for us if you do. I appreciate it. But we're much older than you are. Jerry.
Well, yeah, she's going to say that I'm the older one.
You and I are both still 29, 33.
Oh, I couldn't even cop to 49. No.
Let's just all say we look above average.
Let's go with that. Right? That's the safest way to do it.
I like that. Benjamin, you have a story to tell us, and you actually have a story to tell that became a musical. This is very interesting. A musical about hospice.
Yeah, you can say a musical about hospice. You can say a hospice musical. It's called Life Review, the Hospice Musical. And this project was inspired by real life experiences that I walked through as a beginner chaplain working hospice care.
So tell us more about how long did you work in hospice?
So as a, for those of you who don't happen to be, so forgive me in advance for being an over-explainer. There's a program called CPE, which is Clinical Pastoral Education, which certifies chaplains, one of a couple of big accreditation programs. So I was doing that my very first year of CPE. My internship was at a residential hospice called Center for Hope in Elizabeth and Scotch Plains, New Jersey. It was during that year when I first experienced the power of these so-called life review interviews. It's a clinical technique. I did not coin the term. I just chose to borrow it to title my musical because it is through those interviews that you draw out stories about the most important things in a person's life. You know, hospice is such an incredibly momentous time in terms of the life cycle, right? We're gathering around the bedside of our loved ones, be they parents or siblings or spouses or friends, neighbors, whatever. But there's this opportunity in hospice care, especially in the residential hospice that I portray on stage. It's called Hopeful Hospice in the musical, but it is a nod to Center for Hope. You know, there's an opportunity when hospice is done right for loved ones to gather. Unfortunately, we know that sometimes people wait too long and the person is super, super sick and non-conversant, and then all the joys of hospice care are not really helpful. Ideally, someone, in my mind, based on my observations, is in hospice for a few months so that they can have just a totally different end-of-life care experience than they would if they spend 3 more months, say, in cancer treatments in a hospital. And then, this is not to me, I'm not here as a proselytizer for the hospice industry. I just want to be clear that the characters I have brought to life on stage, they're composites of real life people who I met in residential hospice care, who told me their stories when I asked them the right questions, doing this life review process. Then one fateful night, I'm on the phone with my wife driving back to our little town. And I say, honey, I think these stories that I'm hearing bedside, they want to be songs. She replied without missing a beat, honey, get writing. And then that night, I took out a journal after my daughter went to bed and I sketched out the words that would later become one of my proudest songs. It's a ballad called Will It Still Snow? Parentheses, when I'm gone. And it's a very moving ballad sung by a woman who's facing the end of her life. And she's waxing poetic about ski vacations in Western Mass with her kids. And she's wondering, will it keep snowing even after she dies? So that's a very specific wondering. But for many of us, we wonder more broadly as we face our own mortality. Does life continue after our own personal life ends, right? Because we are seeing the world through these eyes. So when these eyes close, does the world vanish? I think a lot of us have that thought on different levels, whether it's literally or metaphorically. You can interpret it as you like. It's a song, right? But that song, Will It Still Snow, would become the first song I shared with anyone. Shout out to all my creatives out there. If you've written something, please find someone nice and share it. It deserves to be heard. That's the scary moment. And I brought that song to a song swap at a Jewish education conference. It wasn't even a songwriter thing, but it was a song sharing circle hosted by the wonderfully talented Sue Horowitz. Look her up on the internet. She's amazing. Sue Horowitz. Anyway, I shared that ballad with a room full of 30 or 40 Jewish educators, and approximately half the room was in tears by the time I was done. Sue came up to me after and said, Ben, I think you've created something of great power here. And I said, yeah. And I sort of took a deep breath through it because it was intense emotionally for me to sing the song and then have all these people weeping. And it was also exciting as a creative person to realize that I'd written something that was moving in such an instant way to people. She encouraged me to keep writing. She reminded me to add variety. She said, whether it's West Side Story with Officer Krupke or Hamilton with I'll Be Back, like every musical, no matter how dramatic, needs to have its light moments. So she said, write comedy numbers, write sexy numbers, write whatever it is. So I followed her advice. We have one very PG-13 raunchy, unapologetically raunchy R&B number where the patients are lusting after the care team. That's called This Time. And, it's like, this time I will undress you. This time I'll sponge you clean. Or no, I want to get dirty with you and then sponge you clean. That's the punchline, right? So when we had the ensemble doing it, they were doing the kind of wax on, wax off with the sponges. And it got a big laugh. And for some people that's cringy, but I like to point out that for many individuals, the sex drive actually outlasts the drive for hunger and thirst, depending on the person. But it's like one of the basic three beyond breathing. If you can breathe, you want to eat, drink, and fornicate, to put it lightly.
It's the need for intimacy. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's a beautiful and poetic way you could say intimacy, you could say pleasure, you could say fornication. However you interpret the urge, it's a powerful one. And it continues until elder care and even hospice care.
True.
And I would sometimes hear people who are like, the funny thing about hospice care, people who aren't familiar with that world, not everyone is able to get up and sing and dance like my fictional characters, but there are opportunities for people to have conversations. Think about someone with a rapidly progressing cancer, their body might be shutting down, but their brain is still totally working. So they can have very deep and meaningful interactions, whether that patient is 30 or 50 or 70 or 90. There are other patients who lose the ability to talk, in which case the conversation you see on stage might be fanciful. In plays that I love, such as American Idiot and Rent and Hair, there are moments when people who are dead or dying in beds get up and dance. So like my people do that all night long, because that's the magic of theater. We want to also keep it lively, even though we are dealing with this admittedly heavy topic.
Yeah. So when have you actually had the musical on stage? Has it been presented on stage several times?
Yeah. So we've done 2 live workshops. The first one was in Portland, Oregon at a national education conference, and fellow Jewish musicians stood up there and we presented it kind of like a concert version. That was 10 songs performed live. And one of our 3 composers, Andy Bosov, was musical director, accompanied on piano. It was like a cabaret show. He did narration. We did a fully fleshed, full-length version, again, workshop style, in the end of January 2020. So we got it in like a month and a day before COVID hit the East Coast.
Right.
But that was very exciting. That was with community theater talent. That was now 16 songs. We had a piano and a percussionist, so a mini pit band. And we included dialogue. It was like minimally staged. So we had a dangerously flimsy chaise lounge chair. Can you picture the kind that like you fall asleep in at the pool?
Yes.
So pro tip, guys, if you're staging a play, don't use that as scenery. Especially if one of your cast members is very talented and very overweight. Very iffy. So there was one moment when he got up to sing a song and the whole audience like gasped as the chair skirted, and he made a save, but you got to be careful when you have minimalist scenery. But we did it, and flimsy chair notwithstanding, it was very beautiful and moving. A workshop production is, in a sense, a chance to share with the public something that is unfinished. So we opened ourselves. This is like a theater thing. If any of your hospice listeners are not theater geeks, they might not know, like, workshops are opportunities to present the play with the opportunity to get some kind of feedback, whether verbally or written or both. So we had an opportunity to do a talk back. First person who gets up was an older fella, and he goes, It's too long.
You had a heckler.
Well, I think the gentleman probably needed to pee. And without missing a beat, I said, "Sir, please be sure to write that on your comment card. And again, apologies for the duration." Next question. like, what can you say to that? However, it's a piece of data. And he was right, because when I went from like the 10-song version that was like a cabaret show with barely any dialogue, mostly narration, to a fully fleshed play, I added monologues, I added scenes of dialogue. My style is very talky, not as good as Neil Simon, but he's one of my playwriting heroes. But there's a lot of banter, which honestly, that's like the joy of hospice. Again, if you're lucky enough to be able to have those conversations.
Right.
And that's where all of the magic lies. It's the stories that come from the conversations, and what happens. The main character, the rabbi, his heart starts to open up at a moment that he is stricken with his own personal grief. And the only way he can walk his grief journey is by stepping back. There's a Hebrew term I'm going to share with you and your listeners called tzimtzum. It's fun to say. Tzimtzum, tzadi yud mem, tzadi vav mem. Sofit. There we go. It's a term that's a little bit mystical. The idea is the withdrawal from a space. So according to legend, when God created the world, when the world wasn't there, God was everything. And God had to remove God's self from the space that would be later occupied by Earth to make space for it to exist alongside God's awesomeness. And then at other points in the biblical narrative, we learn that God was more present, as in, like thunder and lightning cloud and God smiting people. Smiting? I don't know. Thank goodness there's not as much smiting in the more recent books. But, God was seen as an activist. But then there are a lot of times when God has famously been apparently absent. And this is actually the heart of one of the big theological questions of my show. In every musical, you need an I Wish song. My I Wish song is a theological song because the main character is a rabbi. But the question is like, God, here, I'll read the lyric. God, can you hear me even when I've nothing to say, when nothing is going my way? God, are you near me? There's a lot there.
Yeah, there is a lot there.
You believe in God and you don't want things to go wrong. And then the first time real life, sorry if that killed your levels, but the first time real life smacks you across the face, whether it's the shocking divorce, the sudden death of a child, God forbid, the surprise death of the first in your peer group, whether to illness or suicide or overdose. I mean, my first friend younger than me died when I was, I want to say 30. I think he was 28. He had muscular dystrophy. He might have gotten into his 30s. But one of my work friends died when I was like 23, and he had like mellowed out, but still dropped dead at 46 because he had partied so hard from age 14 to 35. So, live hard, die young. It's one way to do it. So I've had a few deaths along the way. This is something, by the way, we talk about in our CPE training. I think I did this exercise 4 times, your death timeline.
Right.
Listeners at home, it's a fun exercise. Take a piece of paper, turn it landscape style, and write the date of your birth on the left, and on the right, a little vertical line for the current year. And then kind of make a bunch of vertical lines representing years. And then you map out the different momentous births and deaths. It's mostly the deaths across your lifetime. So for me, my first momentous death was Grandma Charlotte, who dropped dead of a heart attack suddenly when I want to say 9. I wasn't there, but I got the call at school, and it's like early death memory for me.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Tragically, I missed, this sounds funny, but it's sad funny, I guess, like a lot of my stuff. I missed the Fiddler on the Roof performance at the high school. They had like a dress rehearsal and invited the elementary kids to see it. And I remember the scene vividly. I don't remember much from 3rd grade, but I do remember we were getting ready for this big trip. And I was already like a theater nerd, loved musicals. I was psyched to go to the high school. And, some grown up comes into the room, as they do when like bad news happens to kids. Like, Benjamin, we have some sad news for you. And like, my teacher came over, I think, grandma died. Do you want to go home or do you want to go to the theater? And I was like, oh, I think I want to go see Fiddler on the Roof. Like, I really wanted to go, right? And then they send everyone to the bathroom, as they do in elementary school, and, do my business, washing my hands, and I just break down crying. I was a sensitive little boy then, and I became the sensitive flower I am as a 41-year-old. But, one of my friends found me crying in the bathroom and said, Ben, what's going on? And I was like, my grandma died. And he said, like, you're going to go see the play? Shouldn't you go home? And I was like, I wanted to see the play.
Right.
And then I was like, I'm going to go home. And I kind of sniffled my way back into the classroom, washed my face again so I didn't look too messy. Even when you're in third grade, you don't want to be the boy who like cries in front of everyone.
Right.
And I went home and I found my dad bereft. Because, when someone dies of a catastrophic heart attack, it is shocking. It's unexpected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my dad had just lost his mom and I'd never really seen him cry openly. I remember a couple of years later when the widower, my grandpa Bernie, died after a long hospitalization. And it was, I think, 9 months from a fall in our backyard. Unfortunately, I witnessed the injury. And he was hurt badly, taken in the hospital, had a broken back. And you know how it goes. Sometimes even just a broken hip can send an old person spiraling down the end of life tunnel with a complicated hospitalization. This was the case for Bernie with a broken back and mini strokes and so forth. 9 or 10 months of hospitalization before he died in the hospital.
Oh, goodness.
And that was when I was, I want to say like 11 or 12. And I loved Grandpa Bernie so much. I loved him so much. And I like to imagine that some of my best qualities are echoes of his personality, the sort of cheerful, friendly persona. I like to meet all the kids in the school, and say hello to everyone. Bernie was a postal worker back before UPS was invented. And so USPS had all of the packages as well. And he did parcel post for like a big neighborhood in Far Rockaway. So he literally knew thousands of people from doing his route. And when he died, this was back in the early 90s before Facebook, people came out of the woodwork, both to the funeral and like cards for days, weeks, months, people who remembered him from the mail route. So to me, that's like an amazing legacy about friendliness,
Right.
about extending your love and humor and compassion, interest to people. We heard all these amazing stories about how he would remember birthdays, or maybe he would notice an uptick in packages and say, is it your birthday?
Oh, that's
that
sweet.
was Bernie. I want to mention my friend Pete, the one who died of muscular dystrophy. He and I became buddies when I was disabled in college after a ridiculous injury. I got hurt it wasn't ridiculous. The injury was quite real. The stunt was foolish. I'll just leave it there. Luckily, I didn't get killed or paralyzed. Many doctors told me that, but I was in a wheelchair for like 4 or 5 weeks rolling around the campus. And I met Pete, who was already in a motorized chair because he was a dude with muscular dystrophy. And we went on to become good friends. And he outlived his life expectancy, made it into his mid-30s, got married, fathered a child, earned a master's. So rest in peace, Pete. My parents are alive. My wife's parents are alive. But as a hospice chaplain, I've also buried as a congregational cantor, I've worked as it's a Jewish music minister. I've probably buried nearly 100 people, 100 cemeteries over the years. Cemetery services and funeral services. And then in hospice chaplaincy, it's got to be over 100, maybe a few hundred. Some you meet and get a real relationship with, but I'm imagining if a lot of your listeners are hospice workers, you guys know that there's some hospice situations, what I call circuit hospice, where you're traveling a region, So I
Right.
did that right before COVID hit. I was working one day as a per diem, making a few $100 a day doing this. So, decent money. It's a very particular skill. And I had a few patients that were on my roster. A lot of it was like covering for others, so they could meet their prescribed number of visits. So some of them I got to know, and some I only saw once.
Yeah.
You learn in hospice training to try to open the door to conversations, because you never know if you'll have a second chance.
Well, and that's the whole point of the life review, right? Is to not only have that conversation, but to help this person, this patient, to see the point of their life. What was your life about? What did you do? What were the high points? What were the low points? What would you say are your most meaningful memories that you've had, and so forth? So
Absolutely.
life review is really important in that respect. So tell us more about how you created the musical. Evidently, you have like 16 songs that are part of the musical.
That's right. So very good, Jerry. The full-length version is 16 songs. The virtual cabaret, which is the one that's performing at an internet connection near you, all around the world, that one is 8 songs performed live by yours truly, 2 with guitar and 6 with digital piano accompanying. So that is portable in the sense that I give that performance from this basement studio, from where I'm doing this interview today. The live one, I've exciting news as our virtual tour 2022 appears to have at least 1 or 2 live, as the kids say, IRL. By the way, no kids say that anymore. As the lame grown-ups say, IRL. My friends at Denver Hospice partnered with me last year to do a fundraiser. It was real successful. And they want to bring me out this summer, IRL. So we're hoping to do a small audience in person at some sort of venue there for me performing live, probably with a pianist. And then, big donors can be there in person. Everyone else, the regular people, can make a modest donation to watch from home, which is now, as you guys know, like this exciting new aspect of live music and live theater. There's very few things that we like about COVID, but my wife, who's a fellow educator, also a camping professional, they have this term called COVID keepers. Have you heard of that?
No. What is that?
Oh, so a COVID keeper is something new that we did during COVID that's worth keeping after COVID's done. So hybrid performance for small theater makers, for live musicians, total COVID keeper. Because I can do my cabaret show for 50 people who sign up on the internet, great. Or 500, great. Or I can do the performance for 50 people in a big room, spread out as local regulations require, with a live feed going that runs to your Zoom or whatever your web host is. And that's an exciting opportunity for fundraising as well as for trainings. I appeared last year at it was like my alma mater for chaplaincy, or one of my 4. It was Community Care Chaplains. It's based out of Arizona, but it's an internet, distance learning program. Wonderful director is Dr. Jeffrey Teo, and he does an annual case conference where he runs sort of multiple classes of 5 or 6 clergy people each, and then he gets them all together for a big day-long day of learning. And I was invited to present to this conference of about 40 chaplains. And it was an amazing experience, because what a unique audience. 40 people who can see themselves, their quirky job, chaplain, portrayed as the hero on stage. I imagine chimney sweeps felt the same way when they saw themselves on Broadway in Mary Poppins. But
right.
No.
We want to tell you about the upcoming California Hospice and Palliative Care Association annual conference. The conference features a 2-day pre-conference on LNEC communication, followed by talks on leadership, quality at the bedside, and hospice length of stay. Attendees will hear speakers from NGS, CHAP, and the California Nurses Association. Helen and I are thrilled to be partnering with end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes from BK Books to talk about getting back to end-of-life basics. The LNIC pre-conference will be held on Monday and Tuesday, June 6th and 7th, followed by the annual conference on June the 8th through the 10th. This is a great educational opportunity as well as a chance to connect with hospice vendors and other hospice and palliative care professionals. Register early at calhospice.org to secure your spot at the conference, and be sure to say you heard about it on the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Our sponsor today is Hospice of Southern Maine. Hospice of Southern Maine makes it their mission to provide compassion, care, and comfort for people with a life-limiting illness and support for their families in the comfort of the patient's home or at Gosnell Memorial Hospice House, a home-like setting featuring 18 private rooms and 24/7 care. Hospice of Southern Maine is proud to present the Thresholds Conference coming up in May of 2022. The conference provides the opportunity for families, friends, healthcare professionals, and caregivers worldwide to participate in meaningful conversations with recognized leaders in end-of-life care. This year's theme is Grief is Individual and Universal. The 2022 Thresholds Conference features #1 New York Times best-selling author of Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert, along with Grammy nominee singer-songwriter Michelle Zauner, author of Crying in H Mart. This year's conference focuses on grief, understanding that while grief is universal, it's highly individualized and no two people grieve alike. For only $35, you won't want to miss the Thresholds Conference on Tuesday, May 10th from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Register at hospiceofsouthernmaine.org and click on Events. You can also follow Hospice of Southern Maine on Facebook and Instagram. Now back to today's episode.
So you have a song that you sing in the musical that's about the chaplain.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you'd like, that would be a cool one to share, and I'll take out the guitar for it. So for all of you musical theater buffs, you know that every musical needs to have an I wish song, right? Where the main character states what is important to them or what they need to change, what they need to overcome to make it to the other side of the play. You know, Wizard of Oz, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Little Mermaid, Part of Their World.
Right.
So for me, my rabbi character, he's struggling early in the play. He's not a particularly good chaplain. He's a little bit of a Tevye character, like Fiddler on the Roof, a little bit bumbling. He means well. He's a little clumsy socially. Might remind you a little bit of the playwright, perhaps. And he has a real theological struggle, though, because he's a believing Jew, you know, believing religious man, but he also lost both of his parents before he turned 40. His connection to the hospice, we learn in the opening scene of the play, he's planting daffodils. This, by the way, if you check out the website, lifereviewmusical.com, you'll see daffodils everywhere. It's our logo. And it's because it's a metaphor in the play. In the opening scene, he's planting bulbs, and there's a meet cute with his soon-to-be work friend, the nurse, who says in her Haitian patois, "Are you the new gardener?" And he says, "No, I'm the new chaplain." And she's like, "So why are you gardening and not chaplaining?" And they kind of laugh, and he like offers to shake her hand with mud and, you know, all that silly stuff. But she comes to realize that this nebbishy, awkward guy, and yeah, I'm playing a trope there. He's well-meaning and he's sweet and he's loving, and he also hasn't had this particular type of job before. That may be taking a little bit of a liberty. I don't know if he would be hired, but, you know, sometimes we know that hiring is crazy right now. So maybe the implausibility of the play has lost a little bit, has become more plausible in the age of staffing shortages.
Right.
I mean, if you have a loving clergy person who's willing to minister to your sick, you might take them, even if they don't have 4 years of training.
This is true.
And so this guy struggles a bit. His classic mistake is he says too much and he tries to overteach. He invokes Job terrible mistake. Don't ever talk about Job in a hospice. That's a little public service announcement. So he gets cast out of a room by a furious mother whose dying son, she doesn't want to hear about Job, right? And he just feels like he's so lost. And he looks up to the heavens and he sings this song.
So share the song with us.
Here it comes. God, can you hear me? Even when I've nothing to say, when nothing is going my way, God, are you near me? Will you be with me whenever I'm stuck in despair and all of the world is unfair? Please, God, see me. God, what if I can't say a word or it comes out wrong? God, tell me if asking's absurd. Do you like my song? Send me a sign from where you are. Are you near or far or in between? I have seen so many seekers. I am one too. It's time for you to send me a sign. Oh, send me a sign. I'm wondering about some big things. Can you tell me why you made both my parents die and left me in pieces? I wanna find out. Tell me how not to feel so alone whenever rain soaks me to the bone. Answer with rainbows. Is there a lesson to learn from the pain all around? From the sound of tears in the dark? Send me a sign from where you are. Are you near or far or in between? I have seen so many seekers. I am one too. I turn my heart to you. So please, God, send me a sign. Oh, send me a sign. Send me a sign.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I think it worked because
half your audience is in tears.
That's good.
That's how we gauge a good interview. If somebody cries on an interview, it's
right.
awesome.
Whether it's host or guest, as long as someone cries.
That's
that's
right.
good.
That's right.
I don't know if that's more Oprah or Jerry Springer. What was it? What was it, Helen, that moved you about the words you just heard?
When he says he's in pieces, he was left in pieces. And yet what he's asking for is he's seeking, he's looking, he's worried about saying the wrong thing for other people. And, you know, as a hospice nurse, I listened to the song and the story of the rabbi and what he's thinking and how he's feeling as he begins to move into this job. And I think we're all that bumbling chaplain. You know, we've all said those things that are awkward, inappropriate, or, you know, absolutely the wrong thing to say at the wrong time, or times when we just can't shut up because we're not really talking about anything, but we feel too self-conscious to talk. Yeah. So I think in a lot of ways for hospice people, hospice professionals, that character is very relatable. Very relatable. You don't have to be providing spiritual care.
I appreciate that insight. You know, he's not just a guy who looks and sounds like me, though I did cast myself in that role. There's a reason why I chose the chaplain as our main character, because he's the one I can relate to, having walked that path.
Sure.
But there's a reason why our hero of wisdom is the nurse, she, along with, let's say, an elderly African-American man who's sort of becomes his friend and patient. Also the climactic death scene when we say goodbye to Leroy Washington, former church musician. And he's inspired by a real life person who I knew, who was also super old, also a former church musician. So I borrowed some details there. And in real life, the real life version, we did a lot more riffing about music. This guy in real life, I will not reveal his name, #HIPAA, but like he would tease me for my inadequate guitar skills, which is something that only a musician would do to a chaplain offering a gift of song with guitar.
Exactly.
And he was like, "Where's your bar chords at?" And I was like, "What do you mean bar chords?" He's like, "You're a musician, right?" And I was like, "I am, and bar chords are hard." He's like, "You think that stopped you think that stopped me from playing organ?" I'm not going to do too much more of my Leroy voice. I don't mean to be offensive. I'm sorry. But, there were all kinds of voices I heard, and I won't do any more. God forbid. I'm best at the old Jew because that's close to home, or the young Jew who acts old, as is my custom. But there are characters in the play who reflect the wide variety and diversity of both hospice workers and hospice patients and the hospice, what I call the plus ones, right? Because Jerry and Helen both, that in hospice care, yes, we are providing end-of-life comfort care for our patients, but we're also giving a spectrum of care for the family ecosystem, especially the plus ones. Right. So I intentionally included a spouse, a grown child, the parent of a tragically young patient, and the sister of the aging bachelor, who's a guy who was probably gay back when gay men never came out. So they're all, and when you're in hospice, whoever is the person's loved ones, they become part of the chart, so to speak. They're not getting the meds, but they're absolutely receiving your comfort care, whether you're the chaplain, the social worker, the nurse, the orderly, as they're sometimes known, the GNAs, the people who change the clothes in the bedpan. God bless you. They do the hardest work and get paid the least.
Right.
And it's not glamorous at all, because we all have bodily functions. And when we lose the ability to do it ourselves, we need very dedicated care professionals to help us. Those people, all of us, we all care deeply and love our patients. Some of us get closer, and I made a choice as a playwright to only have a very close connection with one character, because if it was all about parade of my besties dying, it would have been too much pain. And also it's not realistic, because you don't befriend every patient. The majority of patients I ministered to as a cantor playing my music, I couldn't even tell you their first or last name. Not because I don't care about them, but because I visited over 100 of them, and it was 8 years ago, right?
Right.
That's kind of the nature of the work sometimes. And for all of my caregivers out there, God bless you for sticking with this trade through COVID times. But even before it became impossible because of COVID health-related restrictions, it was a tough industry back when we were allowed to hold hands and back when we were allowed to be bedside. For the record, I've chosen thus far, until someone convinces me otherwise, to make this a pre-COVID musical. So modern day pre-COVID, just so that I can have those bedside moments of holding hands and being close. Because to me, that's the thing that I most miss, about being a real life hospice chaplain. I am currently a middle school chorus teacher, different kind of drama, but also not for the faint of heart. We were joking before, but the drama that happens bedside, you don't have to be a a brilliant playwright or a Hollywood screenwriter to come up with great stories out of hospice. The thing that I did is I kind of opened the door on some private, very private moments, and then heighten the drama through music, through the poetry of lyrics. Eventually we hope we will have, beautiful lighting and orchestration, accompaniment. But even for now, it's just piano. Like, if I say to you, will it still snow when I'm gone? Like, that's kind of a beautiful thing to say. But if I sing it, will it still snow when I'm gone? You're just like, oh, right. And it's just something, it's very like 80s, 90s power ballad, because that's Michael Miller, my amazing composer's place, along with Jason Spiewak, also 70s, 80s piano heavy rock. They love Elton John. They love Carole King. So my musical sounds like them. Good. I'll take it. It needs the power of music to lift up a topic that could be admittedly heavy, and the combination of music for that emotional lift, and humor to give us a break, to give us some relief in between. I feel like I've talked more about Black humor or death, gallows humor over the last year than I ever thought I would. And I guess I didn't realize it when I started writing this, but a lot of the jokes are about, death and dying and aging and frailty of the body, because that's the currency of hospice. That's what we are doing. We are caring for people as their bodies fall apart and break down and they get ready to die.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
what we do.
It's what we do.
Try to do it cheerfully. We try to do it with love and care.
Absolutely.
With us, a little bit extra jazz hands. But, my hope is that by bringing these private moments into the world of theater, we might have an audience, hopefully a growing audience, for these stories that are so often left untold. One of my personal heroes, Lin-Manuel Miranda, talks about at the end of Hamilton, his masterwork, who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And it's so moving because it's like the founding fathers wondering about their own legacies. These are like very important, wealthy white men, portrayed by all the diverse characters of his version, or of his work. But like, they were worried about their legacy. Isn't that crazy to think that a guy like Washington or Hamilton or Franklin, they worried what would their legacy be? Well, here's the thing about hospice. It's kind of crazy or beautiful or both. Every single person you meet in a hospice, if they're able to talk, they're going to express some very profound worries and anxieties about their life, right? And did I do the right thing? Did I make the right decisions? Did I marry the right guy or girl, whoever you loved? In the case, I mentioned tangentially, one of the characters is an elderly gay man. Like, if that becomes more fleshed out in the future, like, that's kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes people only come out late in life in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, that's a conversation. Wow. But whatever it is, like, sometimes we get the Hollywood moments, and sometimes we don't. I play with that a little bit through the magic of theater, in that I guess you could call it a little bit of magical realism. For instance, that ballad about snow, she gets up to deliver the power ballad that it is, and then she returns to the bed. And for a moment, we all suspend disbelief, and we don't worry about the fact that it's implausible.
Right.
Because it's just powerful. And we're with her because we know in her head, she is totally alive. And she sees the mountains where she used to ski with her kids. And that's the vision she has as she's leaving this earth, hoping and praying to God that her kids will still ski when she's gone. That's her dying wish. And she says it in the dialogue before she sings. A ski trip isn't in and of itself like objectively powerful, but in the context of a woman's dying wish, accompanied by her adult son, who she used to ski with not that many years before, and now she's going, it's actually very moving when she says to her, "Can you promise me you'll keep skiing every year?" And he's like, "As long as my legs hold up, Mom, I'll keep going." And that's an important moment for her. We all have these moments Of course, through the power of theater, I can write that moment. And in movies, certainly, we always have these beautiful bedside scenes. Disclaimer, reality check here. I'm going to break the fourth wall. In real life, we don't usually have those scenes that are beautifully scripted. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but this is a little bit of a PSA I'm doing on all of my pod appearances, Jerry, Helen, I hope you'll oblige. If you're listening and you have a loved one who's elderly, please call or FaceTime or visit. Please do so this week. Don't put it off. Especially true if they're sick. Especially true if they're in hospice care.
Right. Very good.
You cannot catch old age. You cannot catch cancer. Most of the things that people are in hospice for are not communicable. They're degenerative. You can't catch it. If you're brave enough to be there for them, it means the world to them, and you will not regret it. It takes some bravery, though, right? And I know for as many as are listening who will say, like, go and visit grandma or mom or whatever, I know some of you are going to say, I just can't do it because I don't want to remember her looking like that, or I don't want to remember him looking like that. I would say with love, as sort of an advocate for patients, the patients can't choose how many people visit them. And if there's a little bit of a message to the play, it's when we sit close to the people we love, whether as clinicians, caregivers, or loved ones, plus ones, and we make space for the stories to be heard and shared, that's when an affirmative and celebratory and even revelatory moment can occur. People are surprised. They're like, it's a musical about hospice care? I say, yes. And it's even funny. It's because we like to laugh about the things that are a little bit uncomfortable. But I'll tell you, like in real life, Helen, I used to laugh so much in hospice care, much to the chagrin of one of my supervisors, who was a little bit of a grump. If you're listening, it's not you, it's the other supervisor.
Why did he aim that at me?
No. He used to say, when you're going in, you know, he and I had some interesting discussions about the guitar. So I would go in with a backpack guitar and kind of have that on offering. Like, if you don't want to talk, I'll play you a song or two. No. To me, that was part of my ministering. I mean, I am a music minister, a cantor. It's a Jewish music minister. So I never gave up on the guitar. But he sometimes contended that the guitar took up too much space, metaphorically. Mm-hmm. Like, here comes the show, instead of, I'm here to listen to you. And while I never agreed with him on his position, I understand what he was going for. It's the same reason to me why, like, the cancer clowns are problematic, or the old people like, they're wonderful. It's wonderful to make people laugh, but it's also a little bit complicated, right? Because it's a delightful escapist, absurdist fantasy, but it also can be a jarring return to the clowns are gone, and now I'm just stuck here alone with my cancer.
Right.
And that's the danger of building connection based on entertainment. I've been guilty of this in my other job as a teacher. Like, I can be a little bit like, hey, kids, look at Mr. Kintisch. And that can be funny, but if they don't find me amusing, it doesn't help much. Right. Same goes for when you're a caregiver. You try to use whatever tools are available. Some of us have comedy. Some of us have music. Some of us have quiet presence. Some of us can make friends easily. Some of us can forgive easily. And whatever emotional superpower we have, we bring that to bear in the bedside experience.
Yeah. So, Benjamin, tell us where people can watch the musical. Is there an online recording or video of the
Great question,
musical?
Jerry. So start by visiting lifereviewmusical.com. I guess you'll put it in the show notes, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Lifereviewmusical.com. And when you land on that page, there's a trailer video that's nicely put together with footage from our last live workshop. So you can kind of get a visual of what does it look like to see a chaplain hearing the stories of the people in the aforementioned flimsy bed. Because it's kind of like an abstraction, so you can see it. That helps. You can also click through and hear much more detail about the history. How does it take 8 or 9 years to not yet be on Broadway? So we've been through some adventures along the way. You can read about that. And most importantly, we have the Contact Us form. You can put in your name, affiliation. I'm here today after a couple of mostly good news delays, I think. It was all like, I had another grandchild. We have to reschedule, right, guys? Yeah, but I'm so glad to finally be with you and all of your listeners. When we first started going back and forth, Jerry, I think it was Virtual Tour 2021. And unfortunately, that tour has ended, but it's been replaced by Virtual Tour 2022. And this podcast is one of my first pod appearances for the year. So thanks for having me. And your listeners should know that we are booking for the duration of 2022 for this virtual cabaret, as well as limited in-person appearances for the one-man show. Full cast, we are looking for a production partner. So if you're involved with a theatrical company or a production company and you're intrigued, shoot me a message. I'd love to talk with you because we do have that full-length musical. I discovered I'm a better playwright, lyricist, and singer than I am producer. So I'd love to partner with, a college theater program or a community or regional theater who would be excited to premiere a new work. Because now that it's getting safer, with our audience vaxxed and masked, whatever we got to do, I feel comfortable presenting it live again. The bridge is that virtual cabaret. So that's, again, 8 live songs performed by me on camera. I put up a curtain in the back so it looks like a real thing. And 6 of the songs are accompanied by digital piano, 2 live guitar. And then afterwards, there's a 15-minute Q&A with me, Benjamin Kintisch, the creator. Additionally, if you're part of a sort of institution that does training, like a healthcare place, a hospice, what have you, I also have available an additional hour-long program that's tagged on after the performance. So then I present on the topic of your choice, including grief and grieving, caregiver fatigue, generational issues in hospice care, Hospice 101, how to write a musical, and theological issues in end-of-life care. So if any of those topics sound interesting, I've been told it makes an unusual and engaging in-service or training for your staff or faculty. And then the last thing is I'm looking for connections. A big part of growing a theater project is sharing the words, sharing the story. So if you were moved by the songs or the little snippets you heard today, if you look at the website and you find it compelling, please do spread the word to another person who loves theater, another person who's involved in hospice care who might enjoy it. I'm also on Instagram at Life Review Musical, and that's sort of a mix of play stuff and then like random real life photos. But like it's slightly more funny and whimsical than your average hospice feed, which tends to just be like boring death quotes. No offense, hospice providers, but liven it up, guys. A lot of watercolors and pictures of my dog, which is nice, when you're in the death field to see some watercolors and dogs.
That's true. We
but
have
I would love to hear from you. And listen, even if you don't want to book me, but you're just curious to share stories. I mean, I've had amazing conversations with caregivers. I know you have an amazing listenership, Jerry and Helen, and I'm so honored to be on this pod. But for all of you listening today, whether you're walking the dog or doing the dishes, I really want to say sincerely, I show deep love and admiration for all of my fellow hospice professionals. It is difficult work. It is emotionally draining work. It is certainly rewarding work. And I try to present us, our little niche industry on stage in a way that I hope is not overly romantic. I admit I take some theatrical liberties because it's a musical, right? But, we're also real about the pain that caregivers go through, right? We cry too, as you two know. I don't know if either of you have ever shed a tear at work before, but I certainly have.
Yes.
And that's important that whether we are doctors or nurses, chaplains, social workers, security guards, custodians, and anyone else who I didn't think of, sorry, I forgot you. You're important too. We all, in addition to like the title on our ID badge, we are also the feeling, thinking person on the inside. right? So I think for
Yes.
us as hospice professionals, more broadly, healthcare professionals, elder care professionals, we go through a lot of heartbreak, right? It's tough when you meet people who are scheduled to die in 6 months or less or fewer.
Right.
That's difficult, right? You become in a certain way accustomed to the frequency of meeting people and losing people, of making connections and having to let go of those connections. I also think there's something that is so life affirming about the whole enterprise, creating opportunities for people to reflect on lives well lived, to connect with loved ones when possible, to die in comfort and peace. As we say in one of our songs, it's, to quote Cicely Saunders, we try to help you live until you die. That's one of the songs in the play. It's called Live Until You Die. And it's heavily cribbed from the writings of Dame Cicely of England, one of our our luminaries. And I had seen some of these quotes kind of like on a wall in the hospice. You know, I guess it's our version of like Mike Ditka quote on the wall in a football locker room.
Yes, that's right.
And Dame Saunders up there. And live until you die is, to me, one of the most important mottos of hospice. By choosing to live with the death and dying process rather than fight it with heroic measures, we hospice caregivers are able to offer an opportunity for something resembling a song, opportunity for a story to be shared.
This is awesome.
And that's something that I hope to keep sharing with your listenership and the greater world. So please, folks, be in touch and check out that website, the Instagram account, and so forth to learn more.
I'll make sure we have links to everything in the show notes.
Yeah. Benjamin, thank you so much for being our guest today and for sharing this. You know, this is such a unique opportunity. Who would have thought of writing a musical about hospice? But I'm glad you did. Yeah, absolutely. You did a great job.
Hand.
Thank you so much for that.
Are you thanking me? Are we still being recorded or did you stop?
No, we're still recording.
Oh, my goodness. That's great. In which case, I want to give a shout out to the Academy and my vet takes care of my dog, Peach. Shout out to the deceased pets on the top of the bookcase, Rubia and Weber. May their memory be for blessing.
Just for the record, those are only photographs. Everybody.
Those are photographs,
yes.
not taxidermy. But that is a very Texan question. I appreciate that. Oh, no, he didn't. Yes, he did. Sorry.
Oh, no, he didn't.
You can make a Maryland joke here.
My
Do you know
gosh.
what Maryland is?
I don't know.
Weirdest shaped state. That's what we are. And crab cakes.
There you go.
Really? I got
You like
nothing. I
crab
got no
cakes?
Maryland jokes.
No Maryland jokes.
That's terrible, but I'm sure we could think about something about northern
So when
people.
you're done recording, look up on the internet, and listeners at home, if you don't live in Maryland, look up Maryland and then think to yourself, what a weird looking state. You're welcome.
It's just not the same. That's okay. I'll come up with something and I'll email it to you later.
Ooh, I like that. Sometimes I do that in school when a middle schooler is like, I want to go toe to toe with you now. And I'm like, I'm just going to write this down and I'm going to deal with you later. And then they get real quiet.
No.
They're like,
Yeah, no.
Wow.
and then you hear like the whispering, like, what do you think you wrote down?
Yeah.
It's hilarious. You are wonderful, but you know what? You are probably the funniest guest we have ever had on the podcast, Benjamin. Thank you so much for your
Please
time.
don't stop, Helen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been great. It has
It
been.
has
Thank
been
you. I
awesome.
appreciate you. That is a wonderful compliment. I'm glad to laugh. It's a very kind thing to say. So thank you. Full stop. And as theater people say, yes. And it's a very Jewish thing in the world of Jewish comedy. The sad clown, the Pagliacci. I mean, we didn't invent the archetype, but like Woody Allen is very much that. You know, Adam Sandler of a different generation, Ben Stiller. It's a little bit schlemiel. It's a little bit sad, you know, making your way through the world. But like part of it is laughing at the hurt. I mentioned earlier in the interview that one supervisor found it controversial that I made jokes and even wrote about it in my verbatim accounts. That's how I got in trouble. Like I documented the jokes, right? But I didn't literally get in trouble with like the federal government, but my supervisor didn't like it.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
I still graduated. But I think joking, there's a reason why funeral directors have their own like dark set of jokes.
Yes.
There's a reason, I'm former clergy. I still have the certificate, whatever, cantor, but like Jewish clergy have their own subset of jokes. I'm sure every variety of Christian and Muslim and every other type of faith leader
course.
have their own variety of jokes. They're all sort of inside baseball. And a lot of them are dark because the funniest ish happens around funerals, around grieving people who act crazy. And you have to keep a straight face, whether you're the funeral director, the chaplain, or the cantor or whatever. And like, accept with love, they're crazy. It's very similar to middle school chorus teaching. And they come at you with all kinds of stuff. And part of the training, and this, Helen, as a nurse, and Jerry, remind me, what was your job?
I'm a chaplain.
You're a chaplain. Oh, shout out to chaplains. Amazing.
We should have never told
It's about time, Jerry, they put you on stage. But like it's dramatic and oftentimes, like I said earlier, heartbreaking and sad what we sit through,
Right.
working with the dying.
Yeah.
And laughing is a wonderful way to get through it. So
Yeah.
Yes.
it is a real tradition to laugh through the tears.
Helen said that you were probably the funniest guest that we've ever had. The close second was
David Gold.
Exactly.
Who
A
is
Jewish chaplain from
Jewish
Florida
chaplain.
Named David Gold. And
Yeah, he's a rabbi.
He is. He's a rabbi. Awesome
You should
guy.
meet him.
Yeah.
You should
Are
meet
you
him.
ready? Are you ready to have your mind blown, listeners?
You know him?
Guess what's the name of the main character? Rabbi David.
Wow.
Mind is blown.
We should
That's
never tell
awesome.
David Gold that. I don't know what.
No, his last name's different, though.
He wouldn't be fit to live with. He's
know,
hilarious, though.
I think he's David Goodman. It's one of those literary names where it's like, it's not that veiled what you're trying to say
Yes.
in the last name.
Yes.
Right.
He's a good guy. Gotcha.
All right.
The original version was Rabbi David No Goodnick, but then I was like, that doesn't really match his character.
Yeah. No, that wouldn't be
No,
good.
Goodman is better.
Right. Benjamin, thank you so much. We are so glad to have you on the podcast, and we appreciate
It's been such a
you.
joy and a blessing, and worth 11 months of waiting in the dark for your call. You finally called. And I can finally go get a restroom break after 11 months. It's pretty intense.
So bad. You're a
Yeah,
mess.
why did I have to go there? Because, again, I think it's middle schoolers.
Yeah,
I
because
got
you
it
have to
from-
go.
they're gross,
I get
so-
it.
Yeah.
Well, you're
No,
awesome.
they're just
We
people
love
too.
you.
They can't help it. But it's been so much fun, and I listened to a few of your episodes. You guys are good. You should do a podcast.
Thanks, Benjamin.
it's excellent
We'll
what
try
you're doing.
that.
What an idea.
We'll give that a thought.
And I'm glad to be a part of it. Your wonderful program. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All I can say is, wow.
He really is probably one of the funniest guys we've ever had on the podcast. And I
think
even
so.
cried a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the whole range of emotions was there.
Why am I always the one that cries?
And isn't that what a musical is all about? Giving you these emotions and the laughter and the sadness and all of it. It's all there.
Yes, yes. And isn't it just completely reflective of what we do? We get that whole range of emotions. We see it in our patients and in their families, and we experience it in ourselves as individuals and as teams that work together, work families. So I think like I was saying, I think the chaplain, the main character, is very representative of who we are as hospice disciplines, hospice professionals. We've all had that moment where we've been very moved by someone's story, and we have all collected those stories along the way in our own hospice journey. The patients we met that we connected with, or their story was special or unique, and somehow we just connected with them well. And then the things that were more intense, that were traumatic for us, dramatic. We remember all of those things. And so I think the musical and the rabbi that's the main character is really just the quintessential hospice professional.
Exactly. And, Benjamin had so many what I call nuggets of wisdom that he talked to us about and that he shared with us. And I tell you, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode again just to capture all of this information that he was sharing. It was great. I'm so thankful to have him on the podcast and to have him share this information with us. So if you want to know more about this musical and want to find out more about Benjamin, just go to lifereviewmusical.com.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of Hospice. I'm Helen Bauer here with Jerry Finter. Because we know your hospice journey is 24/7, you can always find us at theheartofhospice.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and please take a minute to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts.
To connect with us, just send us an email to host@theheartofhospice.com. And you can also find us on all of the social media platforms. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.